Hello and welcome to ITV News Central. Tonight's main stories. Landmark ruling means a mother can sue for compensation on behalf of her soldier son killed in Iraq.
All I've ever wanted is answers, and all I've ever got is nothing. If they'd have just answered the questions in the start, I probably wouldn't be standing here now.
Pothole crisis. Councils warn they can't afford to fix our crumbling roads.
I'll be at the primary school where children are getting a very special footballing lesson from two England players.
And deep under a Midlands village, the oldest railway tunnel in the world.
Good evening. The Supreme Court has ruled that Midlands families who believe the government failed to protect their soldier sons in battle can sue for compensation. In a landmark decision, relatives can now proceed in cases for negligence and for breaches of human rights.
It's a breakthrough for people like Susan Smith from Tamworth, whose son Philip Hewitt was killed when his snatched Land Rover was blown up in Iraq. In a moment we'll get the views of a military expert, but first this report from Alison Mackenzie.
For 8 years, Susan Smith from Staffordshire has been fighting for son Philip Hewitt, killed in Iraq. He was travelling in a lightly armoured snatched Land Rover, blown up by a roadside bomb. The family claim the government breached his human rights by not providing the proper equipment and protection. Today, the Supreme Court ruled that they do have the right to sue the government for negligence and a breach of human rights.
The Supreme Court holds unanimously that in relation to the snatched Land Rover claims, Private Hewitt and Private Ellis were within the United Kingdom's jurisdiction for the purposes of the Convention at the time of their deaths.
Susan Smith has always believed her son was sent out in the wrong vehicle.
On the report that I got, they said that he used the snatch because they didn't want to wake the locals. Well, the bomb woke the locals, and there had been other fatalities. And they said they couldn't use the other vehicle because the roads weren't wide enough. But after Philip was killed, they never used the snatch again.
Corporal Stephen Albert from Stoke-on-Trent was killed when his Challenger tank came under friendly fire in Iraq. Today means that his family can now sue. They believe that the correct detection equipment that could have stopped the error from happening wasn't provided. But what is the government's view of the ruling which clears the way for a trial?
Our concerns are about the wider implications that this will have for the safety and efficiency of our forces in combat in the future, and it places some really very big questions about how we are going to be able to engage in operations in the future.
The families say they have a right to challenge the government, who they believe failed the soldiers they sent into battle. Alison Mackenzie, ITV News, Westminster.
Well, earlier I spoke to military expert Rear Admiral Chris Parry and started by asking him what impact this decision will have on the military's ability to fight wars.
I think that all professional military personnel and commanders will welcome this judgment. Nobody wants to put their people in harm's way to the extent that they're killed or injured. And if there's been negligence, I think it should be highlighted and compensated accordingly. And when people have thought about it for a while, they'll realise, I think, that the facts of each case are going to be applied in the lower courts. But I think the overriding issue that human rights apply abroad and in combat is a good one. And it will be welcomed by most military people.
Now, is that the general feeling about this ruling, given that the army and military personnel are really the only ones who face the reality of a war situation?
You can't eliminate risk from combat or operational duty. It just isn't like that. If you go in harm's way, you've got to expect to take the risks as well. Having said that, you shouldn't be put in the way of avoidable risks, whether that's regard to equipment, decisions, or the sort of kit that you take with you. And I think this will make commanders in particular more careful where they put their people and with the equipment they give them when they go into combat.
So, Chris, who should be held accountable then? Is it those commanders or is it the MOD?
I think it's unfair and unreasonable for the Ministry of Defence as an institution to be held accountable for everything that goes wrong in combat or in operations. In some cases, it will simply be poor decisions or poor advice by commanders in the field. And I think it's perfectly right that they're held accountable personally for the decisions they make and the advice that they give. I was speaking to a soldier earlier on, and he said to me, look, when I go into war or I go into combat, I accept the risks that are inherent in my occupation, but I don't expect to be sent into combat with inadequate equipment or be subject to poor decisions. And I think that really sums it up. We have to send our people, our good people, into these situations with the best chance of success that we can. And we must eliminate all the negligence, whether it's at institutional or personal level, that we can.
Rear Admiral Chris Parry, thank you very much for joining us.
CCTV pictures have been released of the moment a grocer tried to stop a thief stealing his 4x4 in Lower Gornal in the Black Country. Stuart Timmins is seen clinging onto his vehicle as it's driven off by Chase Edwards. When he was unable to cling on any longer, he was thrown into a parked car. Edwards is today jailed for more than 7 years, while Mr Timmins is still recovering from his ordeal.
The son of former England footballer Trevor Francis has told a court his fingerprints may have been found at the scene of an alleged burglary during a visit to assess how much it would cost to clean the property. James Francis has denied stealing designer goods and souvenir football shirts from a cottage in Warwickshire belonging to ex-Aston Villa player Lee Hendry. Mr Francis said he had been asked to give a quote for cleaning the mansion after it had been rented out for a year. The trial continues.
A man accused of killing his wife by deliberately driving his car into a tree has been told in court that he's been making up excuses as he goes along.
The prosecution also said Ian Lawrence's excuses were ridiculous and desperate. Karen Griggs reports from Leicester Crown Court.
Ian Lawrence has now finished giving evidence in the case against him in which he's accused of murdering his estranged wife, Sally Lawrence, in October of last year. He spent most of the morning here at Leicester Crown Court being cross-examined by the prosecution. At first, they challenged his account of what happened the night before the crash. He says they had an amicable conversation in which he finally agreed to give her all the equity in the house. But they said this was unlikely to have happened because Sally Lawrence had texted her daughter saying she was a bit scared and in her bedroom and feared becoming a pauper. The prosecution then said his description of how Sally's airbag had come to be turned off was desperate. He said he had no idea how it had happened. He didn't even know where the deactivation switch was, even though it was actually just inches away from where he kept his coins and a map. He suggested it could have been children that he allowed to play in his car. But the prosecution said that meant the children would have had to turn on the ignition, use another key to then turn off the airbag, and this was highly unlikely. The prosecution also claimed that Mr Lawrence faked having amnesia as he hoped the whole situation would go away. When he realised it wasn't going to go away, he started making up evidence as he went along. He denied this. The defence then asked him directly, did he deliberately drive into the tree to kill his wife? He said no. Mr Lawrence denies murder and the trial continues. Karen Griggs, ITV News, Leicester Crown Court.
Councils are warning that another winter of cold weather and flooding could lead to roads becoming unusable because they're struggling to meet costs.
It comes as Staffordshire County Council say it's been forced to spend an extra £500,000 on repairing the roads after last winter's bad weather. Michel Sibbett reports.
We're all familiar with that clunk that means you've hit another pothole, and if you think it's bad now, according to the Local Government Association, it's going to get worse.
When the situation is really reaching crisis points, it's not good enough for government to start cutting funding, especially when in other areas there is underspend. So we're saying to government, look, we don't expect all the cash straight away, but we do expect you to take it seriously, and at the moment that's not happening, I'm afraid.
Staffordshire County Council have already invested an extra £500,000 as part of their effort to repair potholes caused by the harsh winter. But that extra money isn't always there. On average, councils in England had a shortfall of more than £6 million last year when it came to fixing roads. That's an increase from just over £5 million the year before. On top of that, there's also the ever-increasing compensation bill for motorists who have their cars damaged by potholes, now up to £32 million a year. That's up more than 50% on the previous year. But those claims aren't always successful. Stoke-on-Trent City Council told Jerry McNeish they wouldn't pay out, as the pothole that caused £250 worth of damage to his car wasn't evident when the Highways Agency carried out a routine inspection of the road 6 months before.
The winter that we've actually experienced, it's on record as being the worst since 1962. We had October, November and December, torrential rain, non-stop day and night. Then we had frosts, we had snow. The road is a B road, although it's used by heavy lorries for a sewage works nearby, and it's also a main bus route. So the road was just churned up by these heavy vehicles, and in a small car connecting with a hole that size, you didn't stand a chance.
In a statement, the council say, "We take all compensation claims seriously and refer them to our insurers to investigate. This decision is based on a number of factors, including our highway inspection, maintenance and repair policy." Council spending on road maintenance is often twice what the government give them to cover the costs. They say that'll have to change if they're to stop roads becoming dangerously strewn with potholes or collapsing completely. Michel Sibbett, ITV News.
Leicester has been shortlisted as one of the 4 cities to be named UK City of Culture for 2017.
Don't believe it. We're through!
Yeah! The city will now have to submit a final bid and wait until November to find out if it will be named as only the 2nd ever UK City of Culture. Leicester is against Hull, Dundee and Swansea Bay.
I think the strength of the cultural partnership that this bid process has brought together is really good for Leicester, because we have got such a diverse cultural range in Leicester, and we know that. Now we've got the opportunity to show it off to the rest of the country.
As well as putting together a fantastic programme of events for the year that you're UK Capital of Culture, they will also show that that year will leave a lasting legacy for the area that people will benefit from for many years to come.
Elsewhere, an artist from Coventry has won £10,000 after coming second in the National Portrait Gallery's BP Portrait Award. John Devane won the prize with his painting entitled The Uncertain Time of his children Lucy, Laura and Louis. Almost 2,000 artists from 77 different countries entered work. The exhibition will travel to Wolverhampton next year.
Still to come, fancy some new wheels? How you can own a piece of Cold War history, and the mileage isn't bad either.
200-year-old railway tunnel at the foot of a Derbyshire garden.
And after the hottest day of the year so far, what's in store over the next few days? Well, join me later for your weather forecast.
Firefighters at Birmingham Airport are called out once a day on average. Thankfully, it's rarely for a full-scale emergency, but if the unthinkable does happen, they've now got a new firefighting force. 5 new fire engines have cameras which can see inside planes and let firefighters tackle the blaze from inside the cab so they don't risk their lives saving others. Mark Goff reports.
A mock-up of a jet on fire. If the unimaginable happens, Birmingham Airport's firefighters need to get to a crashed jet quick. And now they've got new weapons in their firefighting armoury. They've just bought 5 new fire engines at £600,000 apiece. Of course, they hope they'll never need to use them in a real plane crash. But these machines can pump out 7,000 litres of water a minute. Telescopic arms mean they can fire gallons of water or foam at a blaze more than 30 feet away and as high as 50 feet up. And this arm pierces the plane's skin and fights the fire inside. All done with the fire crews in the safety of the fire engine cab. It's firefighting by remote control.
As we currently run at the moment, firefighters are going to be in front of engines and around undercarriages, dealing with that by hand. These vehicles now mean that they're going to be in the safety of the cab, keeping the firefighters well out of harm's way.
Heat-seeking infrared cameras on top of the machines and on the telescopic arms pick out the hot spots where the blaze is most intense, sending pictures to a TV inside the fire engine.
It'll mean that firefighting crews have got a better understanding of where the hot spots, the seats of the fire are. And that means that when they go to extinguish fires, they'll be able to extinguish them more effectively and more efficiently.
And as more and more of us fly, that's all about making sure that if the worst does happen, the airport is equipped to cope. Mark Goff, ITV News, Birmingham.
A wonderful piece of kit. Now, a new report says Birmingham's young population is having a big impact on the city's culture, in particular its music scene.
The city has one of the highest populations of young people in Europe, with 40% being under the age of 25. Lee Comley's been to meet some of those who are taking part in what's being called the New Beat generation.
It's the UK's second city, but Birmingham is Europe's #1 for its young population. A new report by Visit Birmingham says having a large percentage of under-25s improves the cultural offerings of the city, with talented young people having a big impact on art and music. Electric Swing Circus are one group who are part of that vibrant music scene. Their own brand of electro swing music has brought them quite a few fans.
Like, it's not easy. It's not like London where you can just put a night on and expect people to turn up. But if you're passionate and you can make it work, then Birmingham's a really exciting place to be, a really good place to be doing music.
Yeah, it's a real springboard for creative opportunity wherever you go, really. And there's a massive pool of musicians here as well. And no one bats an eyelid with, working in various contexts and whatnot. So it's all very free and very liberating.
Punch Records is an arts organisation promoting talented local musicians, and it set up a radio station run by young people to get the music out there.
Best work comes when actually there's not much money flowing around. So if you look back at the history of the city, if you look back at the great genres that have come out, Bhangra, rock, reggae, actually they've come about through periods where it's been quite hard. And, when things are tough, music gets better.
It's not just music. Young authors are making a name for themselves as well, inspired by their experiences of the city.
I couldn't wait to finish it and I didn't want to rush it at the same time. But I'm glad I've done it. I think it was definitely a big achievement of mine. The fact that it's here, it's published here and it's in the States as well, that was a big achievement. So now it's just about pushing it and getting people to buy it and hopefully enjoy it.
The report says having 40% of the population under 25 is helping keep Birmingham on the cultural map and make the city world famous. Lee Comley, ITV News.
Sounds good, doesn't it? New Beat generation.
That's for me. I wish.
Now, a 222-year-old railway tunnel has been unearthed at the foot of a Midlands garden, and it's thought to be the oldest of its type in the world.
It was rediscovered after a casual conversation between two neighbours, and now it's set to rewrite the history of the railways. Andy Bevan has the full story.
It's not quite in the Peak District, but this part of Derbyshire still provides some stunning views and a number of industrial milestones. Recent excavations in the village of Fritchley have uncovered this, an 85-foot tunnel, a section of what was known as the Butterley Gang Road, believed to date from 1793. It's got locals and rail historians like Trevor Griffin reaching for the record books.
According to the Guinness Book of Records, I believe they state that the oldest tunnel is also in Derbyshire, and that was 1795 on the Peak Forest Tramway. But we have reasons to believe that this tunnel is actually a couple of years older than that.
This railway tunnel predates even steam locomotives, built for a train of wagons pulled by a gang of horses. It was engineered by Benjamin Outram, one of the original founders of the Butterley Company, a large ironworks and engineering firm based in Ripley. This is a similar gang road at nearby Little Eaton, constructed sometime after the one at Fritchley, but based on the same design. The wagons were loaded with limestone from the quarry at Cryche and pulled 1.5 miles downhill to the lime kilns at Bull Bridge. About halfway along their journey, they would pass through the tunnel at Fritchley. Once in Bulbridge, the lime was extracted in these giant kilns and used on farmland or sent via the Cromford Canal to the Butterley Ironworks. The old manager's house and stables are still standing on what was once a bustling wharfside. When the railway closed in 1933, the tunnel remained visible, but in the 1970s the land was sold and the owner covered the entrance with soil in order to build a garden rockery.
The current owner of the land around here always knew this tunnel was here. In fact, he came down here himself when he bought his house in 1989. But it wasn't until a chance meeting between him and Trevor Griffin 2 years ago that the decision was taken to reopen it.
We thought it was slightly in that direction, so there was a bit of a frustrating moment when we couldn't actually find the tunnel entrance, but we did find it eventually.
Over the years, the route of the railway was moved from the edge of this field to the middle, and a walled embankment was built. Some of that wall contains blocks of stone originally used as sleepers.
This is a section of one of the original rails from 1793. They would have been about 3 foot long in total, and they were laid end to end on these stone sleepers. Imagine that was sunk right into the ground. There's a little groove at the end there, and they were secured end to end by a single pin.
Eventually horses were replaced by small locomotives, the first one made in 1813 by William Brunton, a strange contraption with huge legs that walked along the rails.
The ideas that were being introduced were then copied in other parts of the country and around the world. So this is really where railway technology, as it were, sort of began.
There's now a lottery heritage funded project to find out more about the Fritchley Tunnel, hopefully shedding even more light on this remarkable piece of engineering history. Andy Bevan, ITV News.
Still to come on ITV Central, hardly used and with low mileage, the Cold War weapon that could be yours.
First though, let's catch up with the day's sports news, and we start with cricket because England are through to the final of the Champions Trophy after a convincing 7-wicket victory over South Africa with 12.5 overs to spare. Warwickshire's Jonathan Trott scored 82 from 84 balls, including the 4 which won the game. It means England play either Sri Lanka or India in the final at Edgbaston on Sunday.
7 players from Midlands teams have been selected for the England squad ahead of the European Championships, which take place in Sweden next month.
Yes, and pupils from a school in Burton were given a special visit by one of them. Our sports correspondent Steve Clamp went along.
1, 2, 3.
A big cheer as England international Sophie Bradley, who is from Nottingham, is welcomed back to school. Moseley Academy in Burton were competition winners. The prize, football coaching from this England, Lincoln ladies and Olympic footballer.
Down the other end. It's been brilliant. It's been a great experience to come down and meet some of the children, and for them to meet us. I think we've enjoyed it just as much as them. We've been getting involved, been getting a bit of a dab on, but no, it's been brilliant. Yeah, it's really cool.
The children have had an amazing afternoon. It's glorious weather, and what a day to be out and play football, but they've all been so enthusiastic. They're going to be worn out when they go home.
Well, we've just come off the pitch. How was that?
It was really cool. It's got me all sweaty, and I love getting sweaty because it knows that my heart's been pumping.
And you guys, you got to play with Sophie just now. Yeah. She's pretty good, isn't she? Yeah. Have you learnt any tricks?
She didn't do really anything. She wasn't a scorer. She was a passer to make other people score.
Tackle him! Go!
So a great footballing lesson for the children here with Sophie Bradley. But for her, the real work will begin when she meets up with her teammates to play Japan just up the road at Burton Albion. That's on Wednesday the 26th of June, the final friendly before the big one, the European Championships in Sweden, where the England side will look to live up to the hype. And that hype was built largely by reaching the Olympic quarter-finals. Sophie played in front of 70,000 in the historic victory over Brazil. And now she's gearing up for the European Championships in Sweden next month, having found out she's in the squad, along with 3 others from Lincoln and another 3 from Birmingham ladies. You've been picked for the squad. You must be pretty pleased.
Yeah, I'm absolutely buzzing. When I got the phone call Monday and It was just a relief more than anything. I've been waiting and training for ages, and all the hard work's finally paid off, and now I'm looking forward to going into the tournament.
So Sophie had a close eye on these young footballers. Next Wednesday, their eyes will all be focused on her when England play at Burton Albion against Japan in their final friendly before next month's European Championships.
And we wish them all the best. And we stay with football because the new fixtures for the new season were announced this morning. And if you'd like to see who Midland sides are playing on the opening day, then log on to our website, itv.com/central.
Now, if you're fed up with your car and you fancy a different way of getting around, this could be for you.
Yes, a Chieftain main battle tank is going under the hammer near Grantham next week and was being shown off today to potential buyers.
It's one of the final batch of Cold War reserve vehicles released from the MOD and is described as being in exceptional mechanical condition, having covered only 1,500 miles from new.
It's a Chieftain Mark X main battle tank. This was probably the most iconic tank of the Gulf War. It was a British tank. It's got a 120mm gun on it. It was one of the best tanks in the world in the 70s and 80s. This tank would have faced the onslaught of the Russians across the East German border should there have been a Third World War.
And it's in pristine condition, actually. Now, the Ministry of Defence tells us the tank is fully operational and the 120mm gun is currently live, although it will be deactivated unless you get a special licence.
And I'm told it can be also about £30,000. I hope it comes with a full tank, by the way, a full tank of petrol.
Pocket change. Now, let's get the weather, because it's been a lovely day today, and hopefully you've been able to enjoy the sunshine and the warm temperatures.
Lucy Kite is canal side for us tonight. How's it going then, Lucy?
Well, it's going very well, thank you very much, Bob, but I don't think this weather's going to last. It is turning rather unsettled as we head through the next few days, but it has been the hottest day of the year so far. We've recorded highs of 23.3 degrees Celsius at Pershore in Worcestershire and 22.9 degrees Celsius over in Nottinghamshire. But like I say, things are changing. Low pressure is moving in from the west, turning the weather rather unsettled over the next few days. Expect a few showers, expect it to be cooler as well. But hey, Hakuna Matata. Let's get the weather forecast.
What's the weather like where we're going? Sunny. What about the long-range forecast? Sunny.
So here we go then, a snapshot of summer. Thank you very much to Graham Rainbow for that picture. We've had the temperatures to match today as well. But like I mentioned, things are changing. We've got a band of showery rain moving up from France. That's going to be spreading northwards overnight tonight. So bits and pieces of rain on and off, nothing too heavy, we don't think, for our region. And it will be muggy and humid once again, with temperatures holding up in double figures. And then tomorrow, all change again. We've got more showery rain to come on and off through the morning and the afternoon as well. Not much in the way of brightness through tomorrow, and it's going to feel cooler than today, with temperatures in the mid-teens. So today we've seen highs of 23-24 degrees Celsius, a big difference in temperature tomorrow. And it's going to remain unsettled as we head through the rest of the week and into the weekend as well. It's going to feel cooler and it's going to be quite breezy at times as well. Let's see what's happening with the pollen count. Here you go.
Flybe, sponsors of ITV Central Weather. Suffering from hay fever? ITV Pollen Count is sponsored by Benadryl.
And pollen levels will be up and down as we head through the next few days. Quite high levels in any sunny spells and then dipping to low as we see those showers and unsettled conditions. Have a lovely evening.
And that's almost it from us. We've plenty more news from the Midlands on our website, including the 11-stone dog that's become the fattest pet to enter an animal charities Fit Club.
Hey, imagine feeding him.
No thanks. That's it from us.
Indeed. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow at 6 o'clock from the team. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.